live stream, I decided I want to have my Vatican flag in more videos. I always have it in the background of my TikTok, but I think it's time to have it in the live streams too. And then I have my Our Lady of Guadalupe statue from Catholic Company, and then I have some books as well. So today's live stream topic is very important. I made a video in 2018, right when I became Catholic and was confirmed, about why millions of Protestants don't become Catholic. I think the video is called Why People Don't Become Catholic, and I talked about Protestant scholars, people who are just Protestant lay people, people who are pastors or preachers at Protestant churches, all of that. And I explained, especially in the US, because obviously that's what I know about, I just explained how Protestant theology departments are set up and all of that to lead people to not become Catholic, because my whole thing with becoming Catholic is it's true. We can see empirically in the early church that the early Christians believed Catholic things. The original church was the Catholic Church. And so my whole premise in that video topic and in this live stream is that if Catholicism can be proven factually, why do people not find that truth and not convert? So today I wanted to talk about why, as Catholics and also Orthodox Christians can come into this conversation too, why we should not talk about Protestants as being stupid and prideful and I can't believe they interpret the Bible this way. The Bible's so obvious on this theology. I can't believe they believe that heresy, da-da-da-da-da. Like this whole attitude of bashing Protestants. And obviously, a big reason why we should ever talk like this is because it's horrible for evangelism. Like if you're trying to get someone to accept your position and you're like name calling them, obviously they're gonna be like, wow, Catholics are total jerks. They're so mean. I wouldn't want to be Catholic because I mean, ultimately Christianity is like showing love to people. So I think, yes, we need to acknowledge truth and facts when converting people, but ultimately like we have to do it out of love or it's not going to work. And so that's the biggest reason to not go around and not calling Protestants stupid. But I think we should also not think of them as stupid. And in fact, my whole premise in this live stream is that they're not stupid and it's not their fault. It's not that they're prideful. It's the way our country is set up that makes it really unlikely, impossible for so many people, possible with prayer though, the Holy Spirit, but it makes it super improbable that the majority of the hundreds of millions of American Protestants will never become Catholic, never look into becoming Catholic, never think about becoming Catholic. So this video is explaining why. So the whole narrative that it's Protestants' fault and that Catholicism is so obvious and they're so stupid is that the majority of Protestants would be so excited to become Catholic if it was obvious. Because the whole premise is like, wow, millions of more depths of spiritual treasure in your faith. Like, it's amazing. I cry every Mass. It's so beautiful. I gain so much more of Christianity. Like, if it is this amazing, amazing thing and it's obvious, everyone would convert. But they're not. So I came up with a really good metaphor to explain this because I think a lot of you who are cradle Catholics, you really haven't had the experience of seeing from a Protestant worldview. And then kind of going further into the live stream, we're going to do, of course, a live Q&A, probably in like 30 minutes or 20 minutes. But kind of the perspective, what was I saying? I was saying the perspective of Protestants going in. The perspective, if you're Catholic, of what it's like to be Protestant. Oh! And then how to fix the solution and kind of get around why people don't convert. So here's my metaphor. And if I'm not looking at the camera, it's because I'm reading my video script. So imagine a 10,000 acre rainforest. Inside the rainforest, which is Christianity, so it's Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, is a giant rainforest. There are thousands of plant and animal species. There are individual sections of the rainforest for Protestants living, Catholics living, Orthodox Christians living, and they're separate from each other and they don't really overlap. The Catholic and Orthodox overlap, but the Protestants don't overlap with Catholic or Orthodox. So the entire rainforest, it represents the knowledge of these churches regarding church history and theology. The rainforest is 2,000 years of Christianity. Most Protestants, well, sometimes fly over the rainforest in a helicopter, look at different things, explore what's going on, and a lot of people will never, ever, ever even land on the ground and walk into the Catholic parts of the rainforest. And so they'll learn this broad understanding, kind of overlooking Catholic or Orthodox theology, but the vast majority of Protestants will never land at the edge of the Catholic part of the rainforest and walk in. And I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is that Protestants are really busy. People in general are really busy. They go to work, they have a family, they have hobbies. And so a lot of people just literally don't have the time to spend extensive theology research. So like I said, most Protestants are flying over the rainforest a couple times in their life on the helicopter. They'll learn about it, but it's rare that the helicopter lands on the outskirts of the Catholic part of the rainforest, and it's rare that anyone walks in. So when the helicopter does land on the edge of the rainforest, the people leading are the scientists, who are actually the Protestant scholars, is the part of the metaphor. So people who do decide to study into early church history, Catholic theology, Catholic history, they're guided by the Protestant scholars, Protestant pastors, by the scientists who understand the rainforest into the rainforest. And so like I said, there's thousands of animal and plant species. So you're walking through this gigantic rainforest with the person who's a specialist in the rainforest, the specialist in theology, and they're leading you through parts of the rainforest. And so this is metaphorical to if someone is going to a church history lecture at their Protestant church, if they are a student in a Protestant theology department, if they're an up-and-coming scholar in a theology department, they're walking through some acres of the forest led by the professional. And like I said, a lot of people never even walk into the Catholic part of the rainforest. Most people just stick in the Protestant part of the rainforest, an occasional helicopter ride. So the Catholic areas of the rainforest range for thousands of miles, but the guided tours by the scholars don't go as deep inside the Catholic areas of the rainforest, and they don't do it in much detail. And why would they need to? Why would they want to? The experts on Protestant theology, the Protestant pastors and Protestant scholars, have told Protestants their entire lives and believe that the Catholic part of the rainforest, all the trees are rotting, there's no wildlife, it's dangerous, there have been a lot of forest fires in the past. There's all these rumors and lies about the Catholic part of the rainforest, so much so that even the Protestant scholars are not wanting to go deep into the rainforest because they've been taught by the people who have taught them, who have taught them, who have taught them, that the Catholic part of the rainforest sucks. It's horrible. It's not beautiful. There's not wildlife going on there. Why would you waste your time exploring that part of the rainforest? So even if it does have beautiful plants and animals, people are not going to go inside because they've been hearing their entire lives that it's horrible, it sucks, there's fire all the time, it's ugly, it's barren. There's not this diversity of beautiful species and lives. So if you've been told your entire life by people who have PhDs in understanding the rainforest about the Catholic area of the rainforest, why would you doubt them? Why would you not trust them? How could an expert in the field who's gone to school for like 15 years for undergrad, postgrad, PhD, how could they possibly be so wrong? As an expert scientist in the rainforest and an expert in Christianity, how could they possibly be so wrong about something so important? And something else is that there are many Protestant scholars who have leaps and bounds of more knowledge of parts of the rainforest compared to Catholics and compared to Catholic scholars. But the problem is just that the rainforest is 10,000 acres. And so even if someone is a specialist in the Catholic part of the rainforest, and maybe they do realize that it's not all barren and fire all the time, there are beautiful parts, just the fact that it's so big, if the Protestant scholar, the scientist, is exploring on their own, it's really likely that they'll skip over some plants on the ground or a butterfly species just because it's so big, and when you're walking through, it's difficult to get like this huge in-depth of everything going on, and they're not going to a Catholic scholar to guide them. Why would they? They're heretics. And so even if the scholar is an expert in early church history, in the Middle Ages, in Catholic theology, it's so likely that they'll skip over the parts of the rainforest where certain data is. And I think a lot of people don't realize this because I'm not a scholar. Most of you are not scholars. Of course, we read theology books, watch theology lectures, podcasts. We read from scholars. But in actuality, if someone were to go back and just read like everything there is from the first 4 centuries, it's like the Catholic stuff, it's breadcrumbs somewhat. Like, yes, there's really obvious passages about the Eucharist, about Mary being the new Eve with the new Ark of the Covenant, infant baptism, confession, praying to the dead, purgatory. Like, you can find all these things, but if you're a Protestant scholar exploring on your own, just reading the primary sources, because there's so much information and so much data, it's difficult to see like, you know, the tiny Catholic obvious parts of the rainforest because there's just so much data to work with. And it makes sense to not go to the Catholic scholar and listen to the Catholic scholar if you literally view them as total heretics. So I hope this makes sense, where it's just such a big area, and even people who are specialists in it, it's likely when they're exploring through the rainforest that they'll miss really important things that will prove the Catholic Church to be true. So a lot of people will say that it is the Protestants' fault for not becoming Catholic. It's a pride thing, because why don't they talk to Catholic scholars and ask their perspective and learn from Catholic scholars? So a lot of people don't know this, but at many Protestant seminaries and Protestant universities, there are no Catholic professors or Orthodox professors, Catholic and Orthodox scholars. They don't exist in the seminary. They don't exist in the Protestant university. My Protestant school was like this. I took like 15 classes in the religion department and even more in the philosophy department that went over theology. And so all my classes in the religion department were not world religions. It was only on Christianity, only on the Bible. And we did not have a single professor from a different denomination of Protestantism. So not only do we not have a Catholic or Orthodox professor, but we only had that one denomination of Protestantism. And I think a lot of people view that, and you might say, Protestant scholars, they're so ignorant, they're so stupid, they're closed-minded, they're prideful for not looking into other perspectives. But I actually totally respect Protestant institutions that don't have scholars that they disagree with, that are of another denomination, that are Catholic and Orthodox. Because these universities believe in objective truth about God. They think other denominations are objectively wrong, that Catholics are super wrong. And so I actually respect the intents. I respect it immensely that they're not bringing heretics to teach at their school. That's literally Protestants view Catholics as heretics. And I think a lot of people who are Catholic don't really understand this, because at a lot of Catholic universities, they have a lot of Protestant professors. They have a lot of professors in the religion department who don't believe in the resurrection or are atheist. They identify as Catholic, but through their scholarship, they're constantly, disagreeing with the church and trying to unintentionally destroying the Catholic Church by disagreeing with the teachings. And so if you are cradle Catholic and you've gone to a Catholic school, or your friends have gone to Catholic university, I'm not talking about like Catholic grade school, I'm talking about colleges and universities. A lot of people who grew up Catholic and have gone to a Catholic university, or have a friend who has, they know that there's Protestant professors, there's Orthodox professors, there's Catholic professors who dissent from church teaching. And so I think that cradle Catholics will look at a Protestant school, a Protestant university, a Protestant seminary, and think it's so closed-minded that they don't have Catholic professors or Orthodox professors there. But I want to share an analogy. It'd be like if there was a Catholic seminary and they bring in an Arian professor. Arianism was in my opinion, the worst heretical crisis in the entire history of Christianity, which is Catholicism. Christianity and Catholicism are the same thing. So in the history of the church, Arianism was the worst, one of the worst, if not the worst heretical crises. And there's still kind of Arian theology floating around today. But just imagine you bring in someone who's an Arian to be a professor at a Catholic seminary or at a Catholic university. Or Gnosticism was really big in the early church as well. Bring a Gnostic professor into seminary, a Gnostic professor to teach in a Catholic university. And I mean, even now talking about it, 21st century, bringing in one of the people who tried to like destroy the church from within, it's like appalling and shocking thinking of hiring faculty from that. And so that's exactly how Protestants are viewing it. That why would they bring a total heretic into their theology department, especially when they're impressionable young adults and older teenagers, essentially. You're 18 and 19 in college, there's teenagers and young adults learning about God. Why is it possible? Why possibly would you want a heretic in your department? And so I actually wish more Catholic universities did this, where they didn't bring on Protestants into the theology department. They didn't bring on heretical Catholics into the theology department. It doesn't make sense to me, especially if the Catholic schools are forcing the undergrad students to take religion classes. If someone's studying biology or pre-med or psychology or English literature, that's going to be their only religion class probably in college. And the fact that they don't have Orthodox Catholics, lowercase o, who accept all teaching these undergrads, it's like appalling and horrific. So I totally respect the Protestant university I went to and so many other Protestant seminaries and universities where they only hire professors from their denomination in the department. And so I hope that makes sense to people who grew up Catholic, cradle Catholic, because a lot of people think Protestant schools are so horrible and closed-minded for not bringing in non-Protestants or different Protestant denominations, but it's truly because they believe in absolute truth, and it makes zero sense to bring in a heretic to teach about the faith. And then, yes, in Protestant theology departments and Protestant seminaries, they do read Catholic books by Catholic scholars. Sometimes they study Catholic history, especially like the Middle Ages, where like everyone agrees that was the Catholic Church, or was the early church. People kind of disagree if it was uppercase Catholic Church or not. But ultimately, the university wants, when reading heretical sources, they want to be guided by someone who isn't a heretic. And so going on with my overarching metaphor of the 10,000 acre rainforest, even people who are in religion departments at Protestant institutions, seminary, universities, even if they're walking into the rainforest, the Catholic part of the rainforest, for miles and miles, with the Protestant scientist, Protestant theologian, he's leading them. And so he's going to point out certain plants and animals that he's been taught by the scholars who taught him, and he's going to ignore other things just because there's so much data, it's gigantic, there's so much to read. And so it's really likely that if you're not specifically going into it wanting to point out things that are Catholic in the early church, it's just super unlikely that you'll discuss it. And something else I want to talk about that is a huge reason why people don't become Catholic when studying early church history is because it's a both and theology. So to explain this, we're going to go right to the break of Protestantism. So the Protestant Reformation, they were trying to make dichotomies between faith and works, tradition and Bible alone. And so Protestants are saying it's either or. You have to pick saved by faith or saved by actions. You have to pick going by the Bible or tradition. Whereas the Catholic Church has always said both and, both and. We're saved by faith, which is intertwined intrinsically with actions coming from faith, intertwined intrinsically with God's grace. Same with the Bible. We say we uphold sacred scripture, but it cannot be separated from church tradition. And so if we go back to theology issues in the early church, one thing that a lot of people point out is with the Eucharist. So they talk about the Eucharist as a symbol. They literally talk about it as that, which their understanding of symbol is totally different from how the connotation is today. So that's important to identify. But they talk about communion and the Eucharist as the literal body and blood of Christ. And then in the same document or in a different document, they'll talk about how it's symbolic. They'll talk about how symbol, meaning, metaphor, and literally body and blood of Christ. So when people are reading about the Eucharist, they'll say, okay, Catholics quote these passages about the real presence of the Eucharist, but look at these other Catholics who don't talk about it that way and who are saying it's a symbol. Look at the Catholic who talked about it as literal, also calling it a symbol. So because like the both and in Catholicism, which was present from the beginning, because of the both and theology, it's really easy for Protestants to see clear what to them is a clear rebuttal and a clear refutation of something that Catholics are saying is true. And this can be applied in our understanding of the Bible as well. I have a lot of DM conversations on Instagram with Protestants who are looking into Catholicism more, and I'll point out in James when it talks about how faith alone salvation is dead, and it talks about works and everything, and then they'll point out like a verse in Ephesians of Paul talking about faith alone, and then it's like I'll point out another verse of St. Paul talking about working out salvation. And so it can go back and forth where like in the Bible they're like, oh, it says this and it says this, contradicts each other. And so it's the same thing when looking at something which is as powerful and profound as the Eucharist in the early church. It's just like you see both perspectives because it's a both and from the way we're viewing and understanding theology today, there's like this clear separation that is just like so prevalent in our world, in the Western world, postmodern, that was created by the Enlightenment and the Protestant Reformation. And so this separation of not having two things existing together really leads to a lot of people not becoming Catholic. So that's my rainforest explanation. I think a lot of people don't realize how much data, how much information there is to read. And there's a lot of stuff that is not Catholic specific in the early church that everyone can get on board, that Protestants can get on board with. And I think a lot of people forget that we do agree on so much. And so when Protestants are reading about things in the early church, we can agree on acts of mercy, we can agree on the martyrdom, we can agree on talking about Jesus and the Trinity. There's just so many things that overlap and that we can agree with. And so, the few things, not the few, but the many things that are very like Catholic specific, they are not constant in everything they're reading. And something else that I've heard from Protestants is that Protestant scholars is that there was disagreement in the early church. This is a belief that a lot of people have, that there wasn't like the church wasn't teaching like one main thing, that instead there's like people who believe different things and there wasn't one truth. And the reason is because so many of the church fathers became heretics, like really important people like Tertullian and Origen, people like super important, Clement of Alexandria, who's different than Pope Clement, super important to Christianity, who become heretics and are not called Catholic saints. And so a lot of people look at that as well and they say, oh, Christianity had like a ton of different beliefs in the early church. There wasn't like one belief or one theology, because when you read it, it seems like everyone's contradicting each other because they have the both and in understanding so many theologies. So that's another reason why a lot of people don't become Catholic, because they see all these church fathers called heretics who all disagree with each other. And it's really important to note that a lot of these people who become heretics, it's like at the very end of their life, it's like one theology they have, and the church is clearly condemning it. And then also, it's like the major heretic groups like Gnosticism, where there's like so many Christians involved in them. So this has been 25 minutes. That was my rainforest analogy. Now I'm going to read some comments. So Luis Carlos says, love the flag. Yes, this might be my new live stream background. I'm definitely gonna have the Vatican flag. I've super neglected this throughout my YouTube channel, but I'm happy that it has a permanent home on my TikTok. someone's talking about until Christians read the Bible. What does that even mean? Like, all Christians have read the Bible. Raphael says faith and tradition is the key. People are talking about the Sola Scriptura debacle. I have an entire video on it talking about arguments for and against Sola Scriptura and why I don't believe in Sola Scriptura. I actually have a video I made after becoming Catholic, but even way before becoming Catholic, I didn't believe in Sola Scriptura anymore. Just because of the development of the New Testament. A lot of people, Protestants, don't think about how the Bible was compiled. A lot of people just think of it as like, oh, the New Testament existed in the 1st century. And the entire biblical canon, it wasn't decided upon until the councils in the 4th century, where a council of Catholic bishops voted on which books belong in the New Testament. And a lot of people, you know, that seems so arbitrary, but obviously we believe that the Holy Spirit was guiding that. But yeah, when you really are learning about the composition of the biblical canon, certain churches were reading things at Mass that seemed like Mass readings if we look to how they're using them, which are not considered part of the New Testament canon, and some canons disagreed with each other. And so, you know, we really did need the Council of Catholic Bishops to decide what's in the Bible. And yeah, a lot of people who have not studied about the early church don't know these things, but I mean, that was something I learned in my Protestant theology department. So that was something that really helped me not believe in Sola Scriptura, things I learned in my Protestant school. So Tommy Williams donated $1.99. Should forced celibacy be removed but encouraged? So I think the forced celibacy question is specifically talking about priests. So I have a 30 to 40 minute video on my YouTube channel talking about celibacy in the priesthood that I made during the Amazon Synod last year. I haven't thought about that in a while. That was a very dramatic time in Catholicism. I remember in all my live streams I started off and I'm like, I'm not talking about the Amazon Synod. Like every live stream there were questions about it. But there was the issue of celibacy there, and so I made my video explaining it. So I don't know my thoughts on the priestly celibacy thing. I think that there's so many components, and I think when a lot of people think about it, they see a problem and they're like, how can we fix the problem? And they're like, oh, there's priest shortages. If we let priests be married, there'll be more priests. And so I think that's one reason why they want priests to be married. And I'm really against utilitarianism, and Catholicism is just like inherently at war with utilitarianism. So utilitarianism is when you're thinking about the end result and you're doing something to get to a certain end result. Whereas Catholicism, we're thinking about like the intrinsic meaning of something, what is virtuous. And we're not just thinking how to solve a problem, we're really thinking about the morality intrinsic in it, not just how do we fix it. And so I think if anyone's viewing it that way, like it will solve this problem in the church if priests can get married, I think that's the total wrong way of looking at it. And something else that is brought up all the time, I've made so many videos addressing this, a lot of people think that the sex abuse crisis in Catholicism would have been prevented if priests were allowed to get married, which has been disproved time and time again. And so that's also something that we should never think, well, okay, I'm not saying never think about the sex abuse crisis. That's not at all what I said, but I think it's wrong to think we should solve the sex abuse crisis by priests being married. That's horrible. The extensive studies on it, the John Jay studies that were not associated with the Catholic Church, independent studies, all determined that that wasn't the cause of it. And so, because I mean, seriously, if there's men who are having consensual sex and sexually abusing minors, do you think they're gonna treat their wife in a holy way when they're married in their sex life, like someone who's forcing children and teenagers into that? You know, they're not gonna respect a woman sexually either. So I never understand that. So yeah, I mean, priestly celibacy has always been a thing in Christianity. Obviously, a lot of the apostles were married, but spiritual marriages were a thing in like the 2nd century, where there'd be a couple who never had sex together, but they were married. And so it's even something Saint Teresa de Lisieux's parents, when they got married, they were going to do a spiritual marriage where they were celibate and didn't have sex. And so that's something that, you know, it can even be kind of modern to think about. But IENO Torah Mansion says even the Pope is down with LGBTQ. So I've had to explain this to some of my non-Catholic friends. Pope Francis did not change the church's view on gay marriage, the church's view on not having gay marriage in Catholicism. That will never change. The Pope doesn't have the power to change it. And so a lot of people took one quote by him, and I totally blame the media. Just the fact that they can take one soundbite and completely twist his words completely out of context. So if you look into the context of it, it's really shocking what they took from it. Music by Kate says, "Hi Lizzie, I just broke up with my 2-year Protestant boyfriend because he thinks I'm a false Christian because I believe in purgatory. What is your response to that? Is there anything I can say?" So I have an entire video on purgatory. It's very extensive. It's like 35 minutes long because there are so many Bible verses on purgatory, and there are so many quotes in the early church talking about purgatory and praying to the dead. So I actually made a TikTok talking about it, and I had my purgatory, I had like a list of Bible verses, and people got so mad, Protestants, because, you know, they're like, where's purgatory in the Bible? And so I make a list of it. And a lot of people are like, that's not talking about purgatory. It doesn't seem like that to me. And it's like, everyone has a different opinion on it. You can't rely on your own interpretation of the Bible. That creates thousands of churches. So anyways, in my purgatory video, I talk about Bible verses that church fathers interpreted to be about purgatory. So I think that's very profound, and maybe that's a video you can, I mean, it is a video you should send to your ex about purgatory. Even if you're broken up, he should still become Catholic, you know, and your influence years down the road could be the reason why he converts. Not the reason why he converts, but I mean something that leads him to find truth. So it's really important to see how the early Christians were interpreting the Bible. Like, who would you trust in understanding what Bible verses mean? Some random pastor in 2021, or someone who lived in the 2nd century and was taught by someone who was taught by one of the apostles? Like, who do you think is closer to the cultural context of it? Like, definitely the person in the 2nd century or the 4th century, not someone in 2021. So that's really important. It's really important when citing Bible verses, saying who is saying it's interpreted like this. Your pastor at your Protestant life something church, or someone in the 2nd or 3rd century. So yeah, it's amazing what the church fathers, they say so many things are about purgatory. And it's really interesting. I think a lot of the Protestants who watch my TikTok were probably not saying in the comments, but it probably made them uncomfortable. Because some of the Bible verses, it was like something I read my whole life that I never understood. And once I was like, oh, this Christian says this is about purgatory, I was like, oh, that totally makes sense, because I never got it. And so I think a lot of people had that reaction to it. And yeah, your ex should definitely watch my video on purgatory. You should watch it. There's only like 1,000 people who watched it all the way through because it's so long, but I was like, wow, that is a lot of people. Okay, Tommy Williams, thank you so much for the donation. What's your view on blasphemy of the Holy Spirit? I'm really sorry you donated money, but I don't know the question to this. I'm not the best person to answer. I think it's really important in evangelism in general and just talking to people in your life who are not Catholic to say you don't know the answer to things sometimes. And I think a lot of people feel pressured to like know anything, and like your Protestant friend will think you're ignorant and you don't know about Catholicism, you're not a good person to ask about it. But I think it's really important to say when you don't understand something. And what I always say is, can I get back to you? And if they say, no, I don't want you to get back to me, then they don't really care about truth at all. I was actually reading something really profound on Instagram yesterday, and it said, in an argument, when you disagree with someone, you should ask them, what information would it take for you to change your mind? And so what would it take for you to change your mind? What evidence would you need to change your mind on this issue? And if the person says nothing or they can't come up with an answer, then they don't care about truth. They just care about being right. So end the conversation and save time. So that's a really good thing for arguments. What evidence would it take for you to change your mind? Remember that. Alex Jemfrey says, what is your view on Martin Luther's anti-Semitism? It was something I learned in high school in my European history class. I think a lot of people know about it. I don't know why Protestants are not more worried about it. I would say when I learned about it, I was super upset and shocked. That was when I was like 16 or 17. So it was an AP class though. It was kind of an elective that I didn't have to take. So maybe a lot of people don't know about that. Yeah, because it was an elective. So yeah, I don't know how many Protestants are aware of it, but it definitely should make people extremely uncomfortable. Keith says, Lizzie, when are you getting married? Here's my ring. We're getting married next year. I'm not going to super publicize the date just because I don't really want people showing up to it who I don't know. I am going to invite a lot of subscribers, so a lot of you well know what it is and you'll be invited to the wedding, but I don't want like the whole world knowing because I don't know who's going to show up. I've actually been thinking a lot about this, that I want to have like security. And I know people will think this is like so stupid and not necessary and uncomfortable, but if I'm having, subscribers come who I don't know, I want like a metal detector wand to make sure no one's bringing in a weapon. I just think that makes sense, and we can do for every guest just so no one gets upset. Hopefully no one's like bringing a gun to my wedding. That'd be crazy. So yeah, there might be some security going on. Son of Thomas Moore says, I was blessed to visit LA last week. The one celeb I met was Janelle Parrish, who was Mona from Pretty Little Liars. Oh, yeah, I watched a lot of that show, so she's an extremely talented actress. Music by Kate, what are your thoughts to the claim that homosexuality was mistranslated from the word pedophilia in the Bible? So I have videos that have been deleted from my channel talking about that. And they're definitely, when we're talking about the homosexuality in the New Testament, they definitely were talking about porneia is the word, and it was very common where older men would have sex with younger boys, and this was super prevalent in the ancient world. And even when you read the church fathers condemning homosexuality, they specifically mention that. And so I think that's a really important thing to bring up. But it also talks about, at the beginning of Romans, it doesn't use that word. It just talks about men and men, women and women. It doesn't use the word homosexuality. So that's something that I've literally seen on YouTube, Protestants on YouTube, but also in person. People have said, I can say these words are not talking about homosexuality, but this passage is really difficult to disprove. And I've even heard people say, I disagree with some of the things that Paul wrote. I don't think that Paul's writings are scripture because of Romans 1. And so definitely some of it was talking about that. And what's really important to notice there is part of the reason that St. Paul was so angry about it is because it was sexually assaulting boys. It was rape. And so that's part of the reason he was so angry. But to me, it doesn't matter whether or not homosexuality is condemned in the Bible, because we don't go by sola scriptura. And in the Catholic Church, the definition of marriage has never once changed. It's always been the same. Intrinsic to marriage and sex is having children. The Church has always viewed children coming from the sex act as inherent to marriage. And it's kind of shocking. The church fathers, their intensity talking about how much they hate birth control and contraception, and they say like marriage is children, like it's just always intertwined as the same thing. So it definitely is something that, it doesn't need to be, if Romans 1 wasn't in the Bible, it wouldn't be something like, oh, it's not in the Bible, therefore it's allowed. Like, sure, Protestantism can say whatever they want on it. That's why there's so many churches. And I mean, it kind of makes sense to me why Protestants have gotten to this point. And something that's really important, and this actually like was a huge like eye-opening moment for me, is that Protestants' acceptance of birth control is the reason why so many Protestants accept gay marriage now. Because in accepting birth control and contraception in marriage, you are undoing the connection of sex to children. So by saying you're allowed to use birth control and contraception in marriage, which wasn't allowed until the 20th century in any Protestant group, it started with the Anglicans, one of the councils in the early 20th century. So when they said marriage, sex in marriage doesn't need to be about procreation, when you say that, then you're saying sex is about the unity of the couple. That's what sex is. And so then, obviously, the logic follows, why can't a same-sex couple experience the unity part of sex? And so that's why Catholicism is extremely consistent. We're against contraception and birth control ever being in marriage. We're also against in vitro fertilization because that involves the reproductive aspect of sex, but not the unity in the sex act of the couple. And so that's something that I really respect about Catholicism, and I honestly see a lot of liberal Protestants who disagree with the sexual ethics in Catholicism. You know, they do say that you're consistent ethically, whereas Protestants are not consistent. They're kind of hypocritical in explaining their views. So I definitely think that, you know, earlier on in the 20th century, I think a lot of people should have known that accepting contraception would eventually lead to a lot of society accepting gay marriage. So that's my answer to that question. I really don't like talking about these issues all the time because it's something that I address again and again and again. And I think there are much more interesting things in Christian theology than sex. And I mean, we do live in a hypersexual culture, unfortunately. But yeah, I've made a lot of videos on it. If you don't know my videos where I've talked about the sexual ethics, you can always DM me on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll link it to you. One of my favorite videos I've made on it, it's like 10 lies people believe about sex or something. I don't know, but I talk about a lot of things in it. One of my favorite things I talked about in it is that sex is not necessary for self-actualization because so many people think that if you don't have sex, you're like missing out on this core part of life. And I just turned 27 this year. I've never had sex, and it doesn't make me less of a person. And it really makes me, I don't really get angry that much. So I wouldn't say it makes me angry on like an emotional level. Like I don't feel any rage, but it's definitely like kind of irritating intellectually when people talk about that, because I've been with my fiance for 4 years and we've never had sex or had anything sexual in our relationship. So just the fact that people are saying like we're missing something in our relationship, obviously, you know, the end of dating and the end of being engaged is marriage, which does involve sex. But previously to being married, I don't feel like we lack something in our relationship. I think we connect over so many more important things than sex. And so, yeah, it definitely annoys me when every single comment is asking about these things, because I'm just like, who cares? Like, why are you guys thinking about sex this much? You know, like I just never think about sex. Okay. Okay, more people are talking about sex. Also, it's really important to not get strikes on YouTube. Some people I've been following recently have gotten YouTube strikes. So I don't think I've ever broken the rules. The YouTube strike policy is you have a warning. You have your warning. Then you have strike 1, where you can't do YouTube for like a week. Then you have strike 2, where your videos get deleted, and then you have strike 3 where your channel gets deleted. And each of the strikes lasts for 90 days. They should last for 30 days. Anyways, so you have to be really careful on YouTube. I definitely don't break the rules, but I think it is important to not have these topics as thumbnails or titles of videos, so that's why you'll never see that anymore. W. Gaither 1, why do at least 90% of Catholics use contraception? It's actually higher than that, some of the recent Pew Research studies. So I talked about this in last week's live stream, how the topic of the live stream was why ex-Catholics spread lies about Catholicism. And when I say ex-Catholics, someone who has a baptism, they'll always be Catholic by their baptism. So they're not really an ex-Catholic. I just mean a non-practicing Catholic who no longer identifies as Catholic. The whole live stream, I was talking about why they spread lies about Catholicism. And I was just talking about how a lot of Catholics are super ignorant about Catholicism and they don't understand the church's teachings on so many things. And in the video, I went over 5 or 6 different reasons why that is. So yeah, there's just like a huge problem where a lot of people are not taught Catholic theology. And Catholic school is one of the problems. Catholic school is horrible. It creates lots of atheists. Parents send their kids to Catholic school and they're like, oh, my child is learning about Catholicism, and they're really not. And then people do confirmation class, which is like a year when they're young, and are you supposed to learn about the faith in one class for an hour a week? That's so stupid. So yeah, there's just not enough education. I think that parents, you don't have to really go out of the way to teach their kids the faith. Whereas in a lot of Protestant churches, they have a lot of like Bible studies and Sunday schools and children's event, Bible camp, Bible bowl. There's just more events in Protestant, not all Protestant churches, but like the one I experienced growing up Protestant. There's a lot of things in the church catechizing, whereas in Catholicism, there's really not that much. So you're like completely relying on the parents to pass on the faith. And if their parents didn't know, then they won't know. So yeah, the parents really have to go above and beyond. And I know when I have children and I'm chronicling it on my channel, I'll definitely share through the years how I'm teaching the faith to my children, starting like as a toddler and as they get older, how I'm teaching them about the faith. So if you guys have children, when I'm having children, it'll be really fun to go through that together, and I will share practical ways to catechize and teach about the faith that are always age appropriate to help them learn. Joshua was talking about if he did become Protestant, what Protestant church he would be. I've actually never thought about that. I think in a lot of these like thought experience scenarios, like if you left Catholicism, what religion would you be? And I'm always like, first I'd be Orthodox Christian, then I'd be Jewish, then I'd be agnostic, then I'd be atheist. It's just like if the Catholic Church and Orthodox Church isn't true, Protestantism also isn't true, everything falls with that. So that's why I'm never like, what Protestant denomination would I be? Yeah, I don't think that could ever happen. Someone's talking about the Old Testament canon. I definitely don't know enough about that to answer about specific books. I do have my video though, proving that the Jewish canon in the 1st century and prior and the canons in the early church do include the deuterocanonical books, which are the books that the Protestants remove from the Bible. So I do have my video on that. I learned a ton in making that video. So if you're curious, that's a great way to be. Part 2 of that video is talking about the Orthodox Christian Bible and how that differs from Catholic Bible. So that's like even more content that would be necessary. One day I'll make it. Alex Gemfrey says, is it normal to be intimidated about converting to Catholicism? I just feel so overwhelmed with all the information. I'm the type of person who doesn't really get overwhelmed. I don't really experience stress that much, which is pretty shocking because I'm bipolar and our whole illness is centered around the stress. But I would say I was very excited about it. It was amazing learning more about Christianity because I thought I already knew everything about Christianity with understanding the Bible, reading through it so many times throughout my life. I thought I knew Christianity and I had this closeness with God. And so it was very exciting for me and like complete elation. So happy I cried because I could not express my happiness in any other way. So it was overwhelming in this really beautiful, amazing, exciting way to learn more about it. And so I think the overwhelming nature of it, it should be a positive thing. It shouldn't be a negative thing. That the fact that you could go the rest of your life reading like 3 hours a day theology, even if, you know, it was your job, you were a theology scholar, you could go able do it in a really positive way. And ultimately, Catholicism is about ethics. So I think I've talked about this a lot, but the Enlightenment divide and Protestantism, Protestant Reformation contributed to this too. We see this distinction between head knowledge and actions. So in RCIA, I think nowadays people view it as like head knowledge, learning things about the church, and that's obviously overwhelming. But in the early church, they did, not everywhere, but some of the info we have about RCIA is that it was 3 years long. And you had your sponsor, who was like your mentor for 3 years, who taught you how to live out the faith. And so all the head knowledge is meant to inform your actions. And so I think that makes it a lot less overwhelming and more tangible to know, like, all the information I learned, the purpose of that is to change my actions and to live out the gospel and to be fully alive throughout the Mass. So I think what you should really focus on is ethics, things in your life that you have to change. And so that can involve so many different things. It could involve maybe you got drunk, you were fine with that, drug abuse, masturbation, maybe you're having sex with your significant other, gossip, speeding, driving recklessly, grave matter in Catholicism. You have to go to Mass every week. That's something, confession once a year. You know, there's all these rules you have to follow. And I think that's what you should be focusing on first, changing your behavior. And then going along with that, I think you should be understanding the meaning of Mass. Understand everything that's going on at Mass and get more out of it. Because Mass is, and seeing the Eucharist change, seeing the bread and wine changed into the Eucharist, that's, you know, the best feeling in the world. It's going to be your new favorite part of your entire life. So I think understanding the Mass as much as possible and what's going on there is extremely important. And I think that's not overwhelming. Obviously, there's a lot to learn about, and there's different parts, and there's meanings and everything. But RCIA is what, like 6 or 8 months? Like, that's plenty of time to learn about what's going on in Mass and to figure out core ethical behavior that you need to change. And so I think those are the 2 things you should start by focusing on, and everything else can come after. And for example, Fellowship of the Saints. Figuring out Lives of the Saints, who's on your saint squad. By saint squad, I mean which saints do you have pray for you. That's something that, you know, is not like absolutely essential from the beginning. From the beginning, it's like, which ethics am I living out? Understanding the Catholic sacraments, embodying the Catholic sacraments, and then that, of course, changes your entire life. So, yeah, even things, in saints is Mary and devotion. So, like, understanding Mary and having her pray for us and understanding all of that theology, like, that's secondary. That's not something that you absolutely have to have figured out and living out when you get confirmed at RCIA. And so everything else should be really, really, really exciting to learn about. Something else that I think you can start doing is keeping up with Vatican news and what's going on in the church. So it's really important to follow on social media, on like Instagram and Twitter, follow different like Catholic media accounts. And they'll be posting a lot of information about what's going on with like political news with the Pope and the bishops and stuff. So definitely be following like your bishop on social media, really important bishops in the US, the Pope, different Catholic news sources, and also following people like Bishop Barron. He always posts on his Instagram the saint of the day. And so it's really cool if you just like scroll through Instagram, Bishop Barron's Instagram, you can be like, oh, today's is this saint's day. Let me Google this saint and learn more about him. There's a website called New Advent, and it's like this giant online Catholic encyclopedia. And so if you ever want to know something about the church, just Google New Advent and a topic. So they have like extensive articles on all the lives of the saints, on things like Mary, purgatory, baptism, Eucharist. Like, they have extensive articles. So it's really cool to just like look at the saint of the day, and you can Google this too. You don't just have to get it from Bishop Barron's Instagram, but you know, there's like multiple saints for every day. So that's like an easy way to learn more about the saints. So yeah, focus on ethical actions, understanding Mass, and obviously the other sacraments, but you know, start with Mass. And then from there, everything else is exciting to learn about. So don't view it in a negative way. Aaron Norris says, I love the Hallow app. Yes, I made my video a couple months ago on Catholic apps, so you can download those apps too. It really helps you pray. Yeah, praying more is also really, really important. I guess it's similar to how to talk to God in Catholicism. We have monotheistic religions going on. So yeah, a lot of the apps, the Laudate app, Hallow app, they have a lot of researches on prayer. So that's really important too. Adirius Yancey says, why do you guys pray to saints and to Mary? I have an entire video talking about it. DM me on Twitter or Instagram. You can also Google Lizzie's Answers praying to Mary. There's a video. It's called like 7 Reasons Not to Pray to Mary by a Protestant. And in that video, it's specifically like the video title is Mary, but you can apply it to literally all the saints. So I just talk about the history of it, what it means. Basically, the Old English word for pray means to ask. You can like do a Google search, and like Oxford Dictionary and stuff will say like that's the etymology from Old English. So when we say pray to saints, we just mean asking them to pray for us. It's never a worship prayer. And it's actually pretty frustrating to me because this consistently happens in YouTube live stream comments and TikTok comments. People, I say that I don't do a worship prayer to saints, and they're like, yes, you do, because you say the phrase pray to saints, therefore you're worshiping them. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm asking them to pray for me. That's literally it. And they're like, no, you're worshiping them because you're saying the word pray. And it's literally like, I don't know what to do about that because I'm telling you blatantly what's going on. I'm not lying. And they think I'm lying or something, or they think like I don't know what I'm doing. So I really like, how do you talk to people like that? I just like, I understand people in my life don't know what we mean by pray. They don't know what we mean to ask. But when you repeatedly tell someone it's not a worship prayer, it's not a worship prayer, it's not a worship prayer, and they're like, it is a worship prayer. You are doing a worship prayer. And it's like, it's literally a mortal sin in Catholicism to do a worship prayer to someone other than God. So I don't know how to talk to people like that. I really don't get it. I know we can pray for them to understand, but someone just asked again, why do you guys pray to saints and to Mary? I think they're like not caught up in the live stream, so. Okay, Frank Villardo says, people will tell you, but I'm a good person and I will go to heaven. No, this is not enough. Goodness without grace is meaningless. Human goodness before God is like presented him. No, 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 no. Okay, so any goodness, any virtuous action is through God's grace. There's no dichotomy. We talked about this like 30 minutes ago when I was talking about faith versus works, and I was talking about how the Catholic view is that faith, works, and God's grace are always intertwined. And so even if someone who's an atheist does a righteous work, it's God's grace working in them. It's in everyone. God is like intrinsically a part of every righteous action. So there's no need to separate it and say, oh, this person is being a good person without God. Like, no, God is inherent in every single moment that a soul is surviving. Like, God is in everyone, not necessarily the Holy Spirit, but God inherently is in everyone. So yeah, never make that separation. What I would say in regards to that is that we live in such an evil, depraved society that people see something, like let's say on a scale of like 0 to 10, and 10 is like super sacrificial action, and like 0 is, you know, nothing, and then you can go to the negatives for sin. So people are like, someone does like a 3 act that's like good, and they're like, wow, that person is so sacrificial, amazing, because other people in society are like a -5, and so in comparison it's like amazing. But I think if we think of actual like ethical things, barely anyone is at a 10. Like, something that Jesus said when he was on earth that's hilarious is he says, you greet people who greet you. Cool. Even sinners do that. And so I think people are like, oh, I'm really kind and generous and empathetic towards my friends in my life. And it's like, everyone is. Everyone treats their friends good when their friends treat them good. That's not any moral superiority there. And so the question that Jesus presents is, will you be kind and patient and empathetic towards someone who's yelling at you, towards someone who's your enemy, towards someone who's really inconveniencing your life? Will you be kind to them? And a lot of people won't. You know, a lot of people have this revenge mentality and they won't treat them well and they won't pray for them. And so I think people who are, oh, I'm a good person, like, sure, you're a 3, but like, Jesus wants us to be a 10. So I was reading an Instagram post recently and it was talking about like people's most, it was like a Reddit forum, and so it was people sharing like the best thing they ever did to help someone, and I was like shocked that people thought this is like the most moral thing they've ever done. Someone was like, one time there was a homeless person who didn't have shoes. I just bought new shoes and I gave them to the homeless person. And I'm like, okay, that's like a 1. Like, how even if the shoes were like $100, if it's someone who's like upper middle class or middle class, that's not that good of an action. Like, that's pretty basic. In Christianity, Jesus talks about how if someone doesn't have a cloak, take off your cloak and give it to them. And another thing related to this, so in the first century time period, sometimes like a soldier would ask you to like walk with them and carry something. I don't really know. But anyways, he says, if someone asked you to walk with them for a mile, walk with them for 2 miles instead. And so Jesus really wants us to go above and beyond when we do things. And I think it all depends on economic level for how much good we're doing. So for example, if someone's really poor, Jesus talks about this where a widow who gave in like, it would be equivalent to like 1/4 of a penny in our currency. So the woman who gave in 1/4 of a penny is like a 10 in morality, just because that's in comparison to her income. And so a lot of people, for example, Jeff Bezos' wife, they just got divorced. So she has however many $1 billion and she's giving away like, oh, I just gave away 30 million. Woo, great. It's like, no, that's not great. That'd be like if I gave away $50. Like, if I give away $50, that's like a 2. You know what I mean? Like, compared to, I tithe my income, so I do 10% of my paycheck, and then if I'm making like less money financially one month, then if I can't do the 10%, then I'll do less than the 10%. So it's not like you have to do 10%, but that's always like my goal. And then if I'm making extra money, it's really exciting giving away to different nonprofits. I actually do a mix of nonprofits and just like giving to my parish. But anyways, giving 10% of your income is still like maybe a 5. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna do a really, really, really amazing action, it's like really limiting your wealth, you know, really affecting you. Like, let's say you could live, obviously, I don't know what state you guys live in, but a good example is like Florida houses are like 300,000. It depends on where you live in Florida, but like where my family lived in Florida, that was like, you know, a middle class house. And so it would be like someone who could live in a $300,000 house buys a $100,000 house and uses the extra money they were going to put in the down payment and gives to the poor. You know what I mean? Like living below your means. That's something that, you know, is like a 7 or something. But just taking shoes that you bought and giving them to someone, like, that's not that good. Obviously, it's a good action and we should be encouraging it. But yeah, I feel like if you're going to help homeless people, you're going to devote like a ton of time to it and give a lot of your income. So yeah, these billionaires who are donating millions of dollars, like, Jesus is like, no, the person who put in 1/4 of the penny is the hero here, not Jeff Bezos' ex-wife. That's like pennies for her. So I should give other examples from the Reddit post of things people did that were really moral. Let me see if I can think of more. That was one of the main things. And he said the homeless person like cried and said like that's the nicest thing anyone's ever done, which is beautiful. Like it's a beautiful moment. God approves of that. God loves that action. God thinks it's amazing. But he also is calling us to so much more. So yeah, and I want to read John the Baptist real quick. When he was talking, the preluding Jesus, it's very convicting to me whenever I read this. I don't know exactly where I'm going. I think like John 3 maybe? Let's see. Nope. Is it John 2? John 2 is the turning of water into wine. Okay, maybe it's totally not in John. I've been focusing on the Old Testament recently, clearly. Okay. Oh, it's in John 1. John 1 is super long. Wow. Okay. So let's see. Okay. John the Baptist. I baptize you. Okay, John the Baptist, it's something like brood of vipers. You guys know what I'm talking about? Let's just do John the Baptist vipers and see if that comes up. Luke 3. Okay, let's see this. It really sucks because I have so much brain damage from bipolar disorder and it like really affects my memory a lot. So like my first depression, it was actually my second depression episode, but it was way more. My first depression episode was for one summer in 2014, and I didn't even know it was depression because my depression only affects me physically, not like emotionally or my mood at all. It's just like feeling exhausted all the time and like my brain slowed down. So my second depression episode, when I was like diagnosed as a depression episode, it lasted a year. It was in 2015 and 2016. So I lost like a ton of knowledge I'd learned my entire life was just like wiped. And so a lot of things that I learned about like where certain things are in the Bible that I've had memorized my entire life are just like gone. And a lot of things I learned in history in school that you learn like, you know, as a kid, that's like common knowledge, like completely wiped. One of my friends was calling me. I was gonna have her be on the live stream, but then I'm like, no. It's one thing to include a phone call in a YouTube video and then like edit it out, but okay. So yeah, anyways, so that's why in a lot of videos I like don't seem to know what I'm talking about, and I don't know if you guys catch on to that, but the videos, for example, I've made like 130 Catholic theology videos and I've like done a lot of research for them. I was going to pick up the call, but since it's live, I didn't want you live. I didn't want you to be live. I didn't. Okay. What? Okay, anyways. So this is like a long rant about not knowing where John the Baptist is in Luke 3. But anyways, yeah, so I have like, my brain was like super wiped after, so that part of my brain is like really small and weak and everything. And so ever since that depression episode in 2015, 2016, I forget things a lot. And so if I learned something for a video like a month ago, I like don't remember it. And I remember like bits of it, but I don't remember it. And so it makes live streams hard because people are asking about things that like I should know off the top of my head. And especially certain Bible verses, like I should know off the top of my head that are like typical Catholic apologetics verses. And if I put Wi-Fi back on, will that work? Okay. I'm sorry the Wi-Fi is on and off. I've been like turning on my audio, turning on my phone 4G, turning on Wi-Fi on and off, so we'll see. Anyways, yeah, so my memory is wiped and I've actually been really concerned about it lately. I've been reading a lot of research on it just because it's getting worse and my reading comprehension is like really down. and my reading speed is really down. And my fiance notices it the most because we have intellectual conversations and like I read things he shows me, and like let's say he's like showing me an article or something and I'm like reading it on my phone. He's like, okay, you're taking forever to read it, and it's like less than usual. So yeah, bipolar is so weird how it affects your brain. Like I'm not even in an episode, but it's still like brain damage from before. So yeah, I've been reading a lot on it about, because it decreases your life by like 15 to 20 years. And a lot of that has to do with drug abuse and alcoholism and suicide. But a lot of it also has to do with cardiovascular disease, dementia, like certain things you have an increased risk of. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of research now and trying to figure out like game plan for the future to try to like undo brain damage or do more neurogenesis. Like what can I do to fix that? So we'll see. Okay, so here we go. This is Luke 3. John the Baptist prepares the way. So John says, okay, so he's talking, so John said to the crowds coming out to be baptized by him, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Produce fruit in keeping with repentance," so actions keeping with repentance, change, "and do not begin to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father." So they're saying like we're part of the Jewish people, so we're blessed and we're good. So, "For I tell you that out of these stones God can raise up children." Da, 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 da. Okay, so then what should we do? The crowd asked. John answered, "Anyone who has 2 shirts should share with the one who has none, and anyone who has food should do the same." So I'm thinking about my closet and how I have like probably hundreds of different clothing items that I've acquired through the years. And it says if you have 2 shirts, share with the one who has none. So he's saying you only need 1 shirt. And so apply that to like materialism and stuff. Like if I'm going to buy new clothes, if I'm living this out, I should buy like half the clothes of what I was gonna buy and like give it to the poor. And it's like, do I do that when I do shopping? Like, no, I'm not thinking about that. And yeah, I'm still tithing my income and stuff, but it's like, this is a really radical way to combat poverty that he's asking. So, tax collectors came to be baptized. "Teacher," they asked, speaking to John the Baptist, "what should we do?" And John says, "Don't collect any more than you are required." Then the soldiers asked him, "What should we do?" That makes sense, not con people out of their money in your job. That's a normal thing. So the soldiers, don't extort money and don't accuse people falsely. Be content with your pay." Okay, that's not that intense. Just don't be like super corrupt in your job. But yeah, the shirt thing really is convicting when I read it. So materialism is like a huge problem in our culture. But anyways, that's a giant rant about how a lot of people who say they're a good person are like maybe a 2 or a 1. And because we live in such a depraved society, people are like, "Oh, I'm such a good person." And it's like, really, you're not. You're like a very mediocre person. So yeah, that Reddit post, I was just like, wow, I can't believe people think this is like the best thing they've ever done. Okay, something too, like I was thinking like, what's the best thing I've ever done? And I was thinking probably a lot of it has to do with my YouTube channel and like talking people out of suicide. I think that's probably one of the best things I've ever done. Like I had to do it in person once. One of my best friends had just broken up with her boyfriend. He was like seriously suicidal about it. And I had my senior year, I had my final paper due for my class and I had my deadline coming up, and I sat with him for hours and talked to him out of the suicide. And I was like, that's probably a really good thing I've done. And through my YouTube in general, helping people who are suicidal, I think is really important. And like encouraging people to go on meds is really good. So yeah, I think that's a good thing that I've done in my life. What do you guys think are the best things you've done in your life? That was just really interesting, thinking like the best thing I've ever done. What could it be? Because I think in our country, it's obviously money is really, really important with like combating poverty and stuff, but I think that time is even more valuable in the US. So I think when, like I said, I'm not utilitarian, we're not utilitarian as Catholics, that's wrong. So it's not just thinking about like the end result, it's thinking about like what's going on in your soul when doing the good action. And I think being self-sacrificial with time and investing into people and helping people who are going through hard times, I think is harder in America than giving money. I think giving money is way easier. And you might disagree with me because we do live in a materialistic culture, but, and I'm not coming up with this. I've heard this from a lot of people, from like Christian talks and stuff, people saying that like time is more, we view time as more valuable. So yeah, I think inviting people to things, like especially people who don't have a lot of close friends, like inviting them into your friend group and inviting them to go places with you and like being a good friend, I think is honestly like one of the most important things. That's obviously we need to combat poverty and stuff, but relationships are extremely important. And with homeless people, one of the biggest problems is emotional poverty because they're going through hard times and don't have anywhere to stay, and no one in their life wanted them to live with them. You know, like if someone in my life needed a place to stay, I'm like, come live with me for a year, you know, like I'm not gonna let one of my friends be homeless. And so the fact that they have no one to take care of them is this like an emotional poverty, which I think is worse than the physical poverty. I don't know if that's right or not, but I think personally, I'd rather be super poor and have friends than be rich and be alone. Also, I've been seeing a lot of polls on Instagram recently. Maybe I should post them on my story. But it's like different accounts I follow with like relationship quotes or like philosophy quotes. You know what I mean? Something like that, not like an influencer. And on their stories, they'll ask surveys, questions. And one of the questions recently was, would you accept $10,000 or would you give your best friend $50,000? So obviously I'll give my best friend $50,000. And everyone, like 80% of the people said they would take the $10,000 rather than their best friend getting $50,000. And I was like mind blown. Like, why wouldn't you want someone to get 5 times more the amount of money? And the other thing I was thinking is like, you guys have horrible friends. Like if I made a deal and I got my best friend to get $50,000 instead of me getting $10,000, she's gonna share it with me. Obviously, like, do you guys really think your friends wouldn't give you some of the money if you gave them $50,000? So, yeah, that's a rant about how people are not as good as we think they are. Someone commented a potato and a chick. Is that like a vegan thing? Joe Lancon, thank you so much for the donation. Hey Lizzie, you doing Exodus 90 again? Joseph, no, I'm definitely not. I might do it on my own, but I'm not gonna do the Zoom thing just because it got too much Zoom. And I think, I mean, hopefully the pandemic is over in 2022, but for me, for my job, I had to be on Zoom for like every day, and it got really exhausting. And obviously, like, I love connecting with people over Zoom, but it was just too much. So I don't know, but maybe if everything opens up and everything's in person and I'm able to interact with people in person too, maybe I'll change my mind. But right now I'm like, I do not want to do more Zoom. And honestly, like, I thought the pandemic would be over by now just because the vaccine is out. And I thought everyone was going to get the vaccine who could get the vaccine, who wasn't like allergic to it. And so I really thought that, yeah, I thought that like by this summer, the pandemic will be over. And so I was like really excited to be done with Zoom. And now it's like, yeah, so. Joven says, guess your friends aren't all that much then. Okay, I think he's talking about people who wouldn't give their friends the $50,000. Okay, Alex Jeffrey, are all of your close friends Catholic? No, most people in my life are Protestant. The reason I have Catholic friends is because some of my friends are converting into Catholicism, so that's the goal, for my friends to become Catholics. But my family is Protestant. I went to a Protestant university for college, so most people there are Protestant. I did have some Catholic friends, and a lot of my Catholic friends were converting into Catholicism. So I do know some from there, and I've made Catholic friends like at my parish. I do some campus ministry work at colleges, so I'm obviously friends with them. So I have Catholic friends, but my friends who I've had like for 7 years are Protestant. Are you the cause of their conversion in any way? So I would say yes, certain friends. Some of my friends who are not Catholic, if they do become Catholic in like 2, 3, 4 years, I think they'll definitely say that seeing Lizzie convert is one of the reasons I was like finally willing to look into it. So I think that's definitely the case. But my opinion on it is that it takes people knowing multiple Catholics to convert. And obviously, it's really important, like if you're a cradle Catholic, live out your faith and everything, but I think seeing converts is like very compelling. So I think it always takes multiple people if someone converts into Catholicism or Protestantism or any religion. I think it takes seeing multiple people. That's just my opinion though. And for me, it took seeing a ton of people convert into Catholicism before being willing to look into it. But I'm super prideful. Other people are not as prideful as me. I don't think they need to see like 8 people converting to convert it. Ty says, hey Lizzie, do you ever give much thought to electoral reform towards a fairer voting system? Yes, gerrymandering is a huge problem in the country. I lived in Florida for high school and part of middle school, and I don't want to share like where, because my parents live there, I don't want to share like where we live, like the county or city or anything, but I always show the gerrymandering to my friends because a lot of people don't experience it in where they live. So there's richer people in certain, I don't want to share where it is, but like there's richer people on one part of it. So basically what they do is they take the rich neighborhood, because it's mostly liberal people. So they take the rich neighborhood and they put all the rich people together, because the rich people tend to be more conservative because of how taxes work and stuff. So the rich people is like, let me be on camera. So that's the district. It's like a really thin, like with weird jagged lines. And then the other district is like a normal kind of district. And so if you look at the gerrymandering in a lot of states, Texas is a problem too. It's like comical. It's like, you can't make this stuff up. So I think what they need to do is have they need to have a federal committee of people who are registered Democrats, registered Republicans, registered whatever parties there are. And there need to be people appointed, and they have to agree 100% on the districts for the entire country. That's what needs to happen, because it's totally ridiculous. And they try to pass reform in this stuff, and it's too arbitrary, the laws around it and how to enforce it. And so that's why there needs to just be a federal committee and they have to approve everything. So that's a really big problem. That's just like so dumb. And what I really don't like about a lot of these election reform laws, first I want to say liberals and conservatives, everyone does gerrymandering. Like everyone's doing it. It's not like a conservative Republican problem, like Democrats do it too. So I'm not at all saying that Republicans are like the evil people here. But currently, like in the past 2 years, Republicans have been doing like a ton of election reform laws, and a lot of them are like super sketchy. So what I always say is, if you think people hate your policies so much that you have to try to get people to not vote in order to win, change your policies. Like if it's just so not popular what you're doing, then clearly change your policies. And I'm not at all talking about abortion. Most Americans agree with more abortion restrictions, like majority of Americans do. And so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like economic policy and stuff, foreign policy, you know, stuff that like directly affects everyone's life, tax laws and stuff. And so it's just like, it just seems like you need to like come up with a better, and maybe even don't change your policies, but just come up with a better like PR strategy to get people to vote for you. But seriously, so I actually do agree with some campaign reform though, because I actually received 3 ballots in the mail this past election. And obviously I didn't vote, I only voted on 1, but because I've lived in different places, like different states and everything, I received multiples. And so when people are talking about how there are people who vote twice, that's possible. Like, I experienced how that's possible. And a lot of people told me to not share this because they're like, you're just gonna fearmonger people, like, it's not a big deal. Like, it is a real thing. Like, that's, a lot of people are reacting to real things, but I think they're just taking it way too far. But, yeah, something else that's really weird about voting is you don't have to show ID. And you have to show ID for like a lot of things in life. And so I think what needs to happen is if you're at a certain economic level, you get a free state ID. I think everyone should get a free state ID. And maybe everyone should just get it free and no one should have to pay for it. Yeah, I think state IDs should totally be free. Anyway, so state IDs should be free. And I totally enforce showing that to vote. The problem is like in Texas, you're allowed to show like your gun ID, but not like your student ID for college. So stuff like that is just kind of weird, but Toby says Republicans want voter ID. Democrats say that voter ID suppresses the vote so they can cheat easier and that voter ID is racist, but COVID is not racist. Democrats are two-faced. Huh. So, yeah, I think it's really important to see how certain voter laws affect impoverished people more, and then how certain cultural groups and certain races are affected by poverty more. And so I think that's a very real thing. But I think that if there just needs to be a compromise going on, which is like how our country should work in general. But I think what should happen is if people, because I'm sure some people are genuine about it. I think some people are like, I just want to win, so I want these people to not vote. I think some people literally that's their modus operandi on it. But I think that like everyone should get together and be like, okay, if we're gonna have voter ID, that's fine, but we have to come up with a way for everyone to tangibly get a voter ID. Homeless people is a really important thing. Can homeless people get a state ID without an address? So then what you need to do is have a state-funded homeless shelter where homeless people can put that as their address on their ID. So that's the thing. You can't just like create a law without like making it be able to be executed? Yeah, executed on everyone. So okay. Javon, show vaccine passport. Yeah, COVID cards should definitely work as valid voter ID. I think it's so funny. Some American was like traveling to Canada and they made a fake COVID vaccine card and they got fined like tens of thousands of dollars. And the reason I think it's funny is because Canada has been like really intense about COVID. Like I follow some Canadian YouTubers and you actually, when you go to Canada, like even if you're a citizen, but you were living somewhere else, you have to quarantine in, I think the government like gives you a house to quarantine in, and you have an app and it like GPS tracks where you are and stuff. And if you don't like pick up your phone at certain times, like, you know what I mean? Like they're just like super intense about it. So the fact that someone thought they could like falsify their COVID thing to go to Canada, like of all places to travel, why would you choose there? So I just thought that was really funny. I know I shouldn't be laughing at people getting fined. I'm not mad that, I don't think it's funny that they're losing that much money. I just think like it's kind of comedic, the situation, because it's like, what did you expect them to do? But I mean, I'm sure people will have their fake COVID things. I mean, people have fake IDs. College students have fake IDs to have parties. I mean, to go to clubs and bars and stuff. So I'm sure it'll happen. Okay. Ty says, I agree completely. Voter ID just makes sense, but there are lots of people who could be collateral damage if we're not careful, and the homeless population are a prime example. Yeah. So what I wish could happen, and I know people like suck at agreeing in our country, but I think if you just sit everyone down in Texas, like everyone, Republicans and Democrats, they could just be like, okay, we'll do voter ID. Let's give homeless people an address. You know what I mean? I feel like everyone can agree on that rather than being like, that's a horrible law. We're not doing that. You know what I mean? Just like make it happen and make it work for everyone. John M., do you know many Catholics who are vegan? Yes, just because there's a lot of bipolar people on my YouTube channel, and most bipolar people I know are vegan just because we're very empathetic. It's part of bipolar. So because of okay, so there's a lot of bipolar people on my channel. There's a lot of Catholics on my channel. There's a lot of people who found my channel because of Catholicism and then are also bipolar. There's people who found my channel for my bipolar videos and also are Catholic, or like they're bipolar then converted to Catholicism because of my videos. So anyways, I have like a lot of overlap in demographics. So I think the main reason I know I have like so many subscribers who are vegan is because of the bipolar thing. So most bipolar people I meet are vegan. It's super cool. Because whatever you mean, like I didn't know any bipolar people when I was diagnosed. So it wasn't until I was able to like talk about it more and stuff. And I'll just like meet people in public who are bipolar and stuff. And it's like so amazing feeling immediately understood by someone and like sharing manic stories, and people will share their psych ward, hospitalization and everything. And it's really cool. They're like, I'm vegan too. Like you just like have that immediate connection with bipolar people. So yeah. Okay. Chicken Pasta 32. I don't want to get you in trouble, but are you VAXED? I don't want my channel to get deleted. So people have been getting their channel deleted like accidentally. So I asked from a Catholic seeking advice. I'm iffy, but I do mask. Also, I'm vegetarian, trying to go vegan. Go vegan all the way. It's so easy to go vegan. Vegetarian was way harder for me. I was vegetarian first, but I thought I loved omelets with cheese when I was vegetarian and before. And so I thought giving up omelets and cheese would be like the hardest thing, but it was actually super easy. I was on Twitter, I just found out you can like select a topic and they'll like show you tweets from the topic. So I'm on the vegan one. So fun. And I was talking to someone about the cheese thing, and it's actually, you can Google it, but it's like a chemical in cheese that affects the same neurotransmitters that heroin does. So your body is like chemically addicted to cheese. And so that's very helpful to me to learn that it's dopamine. It's like literally a dopamine hit, and that's why you're craving it. So that was very helpful. And then I actually view dairy and eggs as more cruel than meat, just because, and obviously everything's cruel, so a lot of vegans could disagree with me on this, but the dairy industry, it takes the baby cows away from their mom like the day they're born, sometimes the moment they're born. And then the majority of the baby cows are made into veal. And if you don't know what veal is, it's where the baby cows are like constrained in really, really like tight containers. So they can't even like lay down to sleep. And for some reason, it's like a tastier meat or something. Cruelest thing ever. And just the idea that, because cows are pregnant for like about the same time that humans are. So can you just imagine that every year you're pregnant and every year your baby gets stolen from you? And you don't even get to nurse your baby. Like at least pigs, when they're breeding pigs to create more pigs, they let the pigs like breastfeed on the pig, you know? But since we're stealing the food of the baby cow, they just take away the baby cow. So that's really, really sad to me. And so that's like why dairy is horrible. And then eggs, they take the baby chicks, the male chicks, they GMO them so that the male chicks are like a slightly different color of yellow so they can sort them. And they take the male chicks and they grind them to death, like as they're being born on a conveyor belt. Like they're coming out of their egg ground to death if you're a guy. So yeah, that's just like, and there's great vegan cheese options. There's vegan egg options. So not a big deal. super easy to go fully vegan. Meat is hard. And then going out to eat is annoying. Restaurants are annoying, but you know, it's getting better and better. So anyways, yes, I am fully vaccinated. I got it in like May. I have Pfizer. Wait. Moderna. I'm on Moderna. I have Moderna. I'm getting confused because of my family. So Moderna is the one that works the best. Just like by chance, I ended up getting the one that's the most effective, which is really great. There's a lot of YouTubers I follow who have been getting COVID who are fully vaccinated. And I'm like really scared of it right now because this one YouTuber I follow got it a year ago and she hasn't had her sense of taste or smell for a year. And then this other YouTuber I follow was fully vaccinated and got it, and she doesn't know anyone else who got it. So that means she got it from like, she was at a restaurant and someone was eating before her and their COVID was in the air and then she sat, you know what I mean? Like, it's something like that. Like, she literally didn't know anyone in her life who got it. So yeah, I'm really freaked out about the taste thing just because the YouTuber I follow has been making a lot of like Instagram stories explaining it, and it's like terrifying the way they describe it. So I want to continue to be able to taste food, and that's really important to me. So no one says, here's a YouTuber that tells how to make all kinds of meats, burgers, da 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 da. Unknown player says, hi Lizzie, it's me, Leon from Singapore. Hi, I remember you from past live streams. I sent you a DM on Instagram. Please come to Singapore so that I can tour you around to all the churches. So one of my best friends from college lives in Singapore. So definitely when he gets married, we're going to go to Singapore. My friend group, we're going to do like an Asia trip. So it's very likely that I will be in Singapore in the next like 2, 3, 5 years. I'll definitely be there again. So when I go, I'll make an announcement and I might do a Singapore meetup. I love Singapore so much. Amazing government. Joshua says Singapore has a lot of millionaires and billionaires. It's because their location is, they have like the ship port that goes into a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia. So because of their location, they make money from like transporting stuff from the ships and stuff. So they live in a very amazing location. Okay. People are talking about getting vaccinated. I made a whole video about it where I was explaining how one of my family members is immunocompromised and can't get vaccinated. And so a lot of people who are immunocompromised, who can't get the vaccine, are relying on everyone else getting it to get to herd immunity. Otherwise, I honestly wouldn't have a problem if the vaccine worked perfectly and everyone who got the vaccine would 0% get COVID, and everyone was able to get the vaccine who wanted to, then it's like, okay, fine, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's fine, everyone else is protected. But the vaccine prevents you from having a bad case of COVID. It doesn't 100% prevent you from ever getting it. It just makes it so that the symptoms are less severe and you have a decreased chance of getting it. But because of that, we can't view it in an individualistic sense. Because even people who want to get vaccinated, some people are allergic to it. Some people, they can get vaccinated, but they won't get any antibodies because they have like an underlying illness. So that's why it's not an individualistic thing. Because the vaccine doesn't prevent you 100% from getting it. And so by saying, I don't want to get it, you will infect other people who want to not get it. You know what I mean? So I totally agree. If the vaccine made you have a 0% chance of getting it and everyone could get vaccinated, I don't care about people not getting vaccinated. But it's just the fact that you're affecting other people. And a lot of people are like, don't leave your house if you're immunocompromised, and like totally, like my family member never leaves the house except for like appointments, like doctor's appointments. But most people live in a household with other people. A lot of people have to go to work in person or like go to the grocery store. So it's like impossible to say just never leave your house unless someone lives alone, then they could, you know, order groceries and stuff. But most people live with other people in their household. And so that's why it can't be an individual thing because you're affecting other people. So unfortunately, like I wish that we were able to get a vaccine that 100% prevented it, but right now with the research, they did the best that they could, which is amazing because you're less likely to have a severe case, you're less likely to spread it, less likely to get it, but you still can. So, okay. Joshua says, I know when I was younger, I had to get flu shots because when my sister's heart condition worsened, she would die if she got infected with the flu. She is better now. Yeah, that's really, really amazing. And that's the way to look at it, where you are getting it to save other people's lives. Unknown player, Lizzie, when you come here, I have to bring you to my favorite church, St. Joseph. It's a Portuguese mission church, and my family has a history of going there because I'm Portuguese, Chinese, and African mixed. Oh, yeah, I went to Thailand as well as a Protestant, and I would absolutely love to go to Catholicism there. It's just so, so cool. So, and Catholicism makes sense so much more in non-Western countries that are more communal, so I'm really excited. So far, I've only gone to Mass in English-speaking countries. I've gone to Spanish Mass and Latin Mass, and I've gone to Greek Divine Liturgy. But the countries I've visited where I've gone to Catholic Mass, like I just went to the Bahamas, English, Ireland, English, Canada, English. So I've never been to Mass. Singapore, also English. But yeah, I would really love to go to Thailand and Mass there. Okay, Jones Rising, thank you so much for the donation. Hey Lizzie, I'm vegan too. Someone asked 5 minutes ago if I know a lot of Catholic vegans, and I'm like, yeah, on my YouTube. I don't know if this person is Catholic though. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you chose to become Catholic over Orthodox. So in my Why I'm Becoming Catholic video, I explained it. I held up a book. I was like, this is a great book to talk about why the Catholic Church over the Orthodox Church. Oh, here it is right here. I didn't even know it was right here. Oh, look what book is next to it. Emily Wilson, Go Bravely. Okay. It's called Upon This Rock by Stephen Ray. It explains a lot of evidence for the papacy in the early church. Also, I have an entire video on it. I read a ton of books for that video. It's just look up Pope Lizzie's Answers. There's 2 videos. There's one that is about papal infallibility. Don't watch that one. I mean, you can in the future, but the one I'm talking about, it's like, when did the Pope begin? I think that's what it's called. Anyway, so it's really long. It's like, when did the Pope begin? And I share all the evidence, and I shared that the Roman bishops' power and everything was going on in the 1st century and onward, and I was talking about different heretical crises that relied on the Roman bishop and stuff. So yeah, that video is really important. This book is great. Obviously, it's a really complex issue, and if you're wanting to understand it more, I think a lot of people don't realize that they can talk to their priest about it. It's really sad. Like, I think a lot of people leave Catholicism and they never once ask for help. You know, they're like, oh, I've been really struggling a lot with theology. I don't know why God exists. Make an appointment with your priest and present your issues. You know what I mean? Like, the priest has been to school. He has like 4 years of philosophy, 4 years of theology. You know what I mean? Like, lots of information going on to become a priest. So if you want to know something more, it's really important to make an appointment with your priest. They love meeting with people. I mean, you know, priests are very intellectual. They have so much head knowledge, and a lot of people don't care. Like, we were talking earlier, one of the people who's converting into Catholicism, he's like, I'm overwhelmed by knowledge. And yeah, it is overwhelming. And I think a lot of priests, they're not able to share all their knowledge because a lot of people don't care to be like super nitpicky, detailed about everything. So if you're someone who goes to your priest and you're like, I want to understand the Orthodox versus Catholic understanding of the Pope, do you have any book recommendations? Do you, like, I think the priest would be like, so cool, I'm so happy to talk to this person about it. So I think you could have a really good conversation with a priest about it. Video idea, watching Song of Bernadette with Monica. Oh my gosh, I will send this to her. Okay. Ricardo says, Lizzie, Lizzie, Lizzie. Chicken Pasta 32. What a weird username. You must love pasta. I mean, I love pasta. It's like my favorite meal, but I wouldn't have it as my username. I can't imagine being non-Catholic now since converting. Mass tomorrow, and I always look forward to it. Yes, so exciting. Trinity, anyone here watch the Chosen series? Yes, everyone here is obsessed with the Chosen series. You guys talk about it for so long. Before it became trendy. Like, you guys were talking about it way before. Guess what? I went to a boba making event today for work, and we used the Amazon boba, and it was like $7, you know? And it was so good. Like the boba pearl balls, it was perfect. You microwave for 30 seconds. So good. So next time we're gonna try to make boba with like flavors and stuff. So super fun. Trudy Ann Brown, Lizzie, do you think social work is a good profession to be in? I don't know exactly what career you're talking about for social work, but I know a lot of people who do it. Like one example is helping kids in the foster care system. Absolutely amazing. Also, you don't make a ton of money like you would in like accounting or attorney or something. So it's really, really sacrificial, which I really, really love. Because you're doing it because you love people, you know? And obviously, everyone loves people in their professions, but if you do something where you're not making a ton of money, that's really, really cool. Okay. I'm gonna microwave this. It's my leftovers from lunch. Super good, but needs to be warm. It's like a Middle Eastern falafel bowl. Falafel's so good. Okay. Remove. John M says, I'm also Catholic and vegan and thought I was the only one. LOL. Do you have any advice for connecting with people of similar views? Do you mean like finding people who are also vegan? I mean, I talk about veganism a lot just because you're always like having meals with people and stuff. Like, for example, at my boba event, they know I'm vegan, so they brought oat milk. So I was like, yay, oat milk. This is my favorite brand of oat milk. So I feel like it's really easy to talk about veganism. Obviously, you don't have to be annoying about it, but food is like a really normal way to connect with people. So like one of the things that I do when I'm with a group of people is there's an iPhone app called Happy Cow, and it shows all the vegan restaurants in the area. So it's like, oh, we should go out to eat. Okay, here's my Happy Cow app on my phone. Pick a restaurant on the app. And Happy Cow doesn't just show vegan restaurants. It shows if there's like one vegan option at the restaurant. So yeah, I feel like veganism comes up a lot. You can talk about it. Don't be annoying, but if like you are having a meal or something, yeah. Or if you're thinking about what restaurant to go to, you can be like, they have the best vegan cheese at this restaurant. Tasted like real cheese. So, but I don't know, maybe, because I don't really have a real job, so I don't know how that comes up with coworkers and stuff. I've never had like a real job, but okay. Is this warm enough? Feels warm enough. Cool. These are like the best pita chips I've had in my entire life. And I love pita chips. They're so good. They're not as crunchy as they were before. There must be like so much oil in this. But oil is so good. Because I don't go out to eat that much. I make all my food. And so there really isn't fat in most of the food I eat. So I like cook with loads of olive oil. It's so great. And it helps your brain. So it's really important to have the unsaturated fats. So I never have a problem with oil. I think it's amazing. There are some vegan diets that are like against oil. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Caitlin, what are your thoughts on oil-free veganism? I was literally about to talk about that. So, I don't want gonna share the YouTube name just because I think this person is like really problematic. But in the vegan YouTube community, one of the first YouTube channels presented a low-fat, high-carb diet. And it was very popular. Like, a lot of people adapted it. I was very influenced to be vegan because of it, but obviously I didn't like follow a random stranger on the internet's diet. Like, I did my own nutrition research. But yeah, so it's really popular on vegan YouTube to do low-fat diet and to not worry about like high protein, which I agree with. It really annoys me when everyone's like, high protein snack, high protein dessert, high protein breakfast. Like, vegan food has protein in it. Like beans, lentils, chia seeds, flax seeds, peanut butter, almond butter, peanuts, almonds, cashews, rice, pasta noodles, bread, quinoa. I could go oats. I could go on and on and on. And that's if you're not tofu tempeh, and also all the fake meat that vegans eat. So it really annoys me when people are constantly like, high protein this, high protein this. Like, how about high fiber? Like, fiber, everyone objectively agrees, like the medical specialists and scientists, that fiber is one of the most important things for health and decreasing common Western diseases. So I don't understand why people are not like high protein dessert, high fiber dessert, high fiber snacks. Like, that should be more of a thing than high protein. And I totally get it if you're like a fitness channel emphasizing protein, but yeah, like everyone's getting enough protein. Vegans at least are getting enough protein if they're eating enough calories. So yeah, that really annoys me. But it's really funny. Anytime someone asks me where I get my protein, I just list off all the foods I just listed off, and they're like stunned. Because people don't realize there's protein in like whole grains and stuff. So Chicken Pasta 32 says carbs are amazing though. Vegetarian keto ruined me. Yeah, keto can be a really dangerous diet. It's just like really bad long term. And a lot of people do it for weight loss, and you're gonna gain the weight back. So, not good long term. But I like that keto can be vegan, because anytime someone's like, keto diet craze, I'm like, cool, you can still be vegan and do stupid keto diet. You know what I mean? So, I would never do it, but it is possible to be vegan keto. Joshua says, I know people with eating disorders because I've been to the psychiatric hospital a few times. I didn't have an eating disorder, but during depressive episodes, sometimes I didn't have energy to get up. Yeah, I lose weight during depression episodes because it's like too exhausting to make food. And you lose all your hunger signals. Like, I remember the first time I went on antidepressants, when it finally kicked in like 2.5 months later, I felt hunger for the first time in like 4 months. It was crazy. Because hunger is such like a normal human sensation, and I didn't feel it for months. And that was when I knew I was getting better, because I felt hunger. It was so exciting. I feel like we take things like that for granted. Because I have not been in depression like forever because of bipolar meds, so I forget how amazing things are. Cat Lady, have you read The Diary of St. Faustina? I just got a copy of it and I'm excited to read it. Yeah, I haven't read it yet. Everyone always talks about it, so super hyped up. I hope it lives up to the hype. Yeah, I just like am not interested in reading it right now. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe if I read it, I would get excited, but yeah, I don't know. Joshua says, Joshua Niece, I've had the same command voices before. I don't want to say it because I don't want this live stream to get deleted. So I'm gonna remove it too, just because I don't want my channel deleted. Okay. Apple Pumpkin 500. Hey Lizzie, what are your thoughts on the use of psychedelics for spiritual purposes? So my first question is, is it legal in the country or your state? If it's not, then don't disobey the law for a random emotional effect. That's horrible. Is it allowed in Catholicism if you're Catholic? No, I don't see that being allowed. I mean, it could be. See, the catechism is a little bit ambiguous about drug use, just because, for example, like tobacco is an addiction. So you can't say like that's always grave matter because someone's like literally addicted to it. And it's interesting because like the church is against getting drunk, but not like smoking. So anyways, but hard drugs definitely not okay. So definitely check the catechism. I don't know if it talks about psychedelics. I feel like it doesn't. But yeah, talk to your priest about it before. I don't think my priest would be okay with it. Okay, everyone's against psychedelics. Yeah, honestly, I don't even know much about them. I think this one YouTuber I watched took them once. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna go get more hummus because there's not enough sauce in this. Okay, let's see. Do I have hummus? Yay! Okay guys, I'll be back in a second. I'm just getting some hummus. Cool. I was gonna get tahini, but I like hummus way more than tahini. Actually, I need to start making my own hummus because you can just make it at home in a blender with garbanzo beans, which are also called chickpeas. And that's literally how they make hummus, just with like garbanzo beans and like some cumin spice and garlic, salt, and some olive oil. And like a can of garbanzo beans is like 60 cents. So, but hummus can be like really expensive. Okay. Oh, now my food is cold again. I don't like it. Okay. Have the anathemas been rescinded? I don't know which ones you're talking about. Going off antidepressants made your eating disorder worse. Yeah, they actually give antidepressants for eating disorders sometimes, so that makes sense that it might have been helping that mental illness as well. Cat Lady says, hey, I'm thinking about becoming a sister, which for everyone else who doesn't know, it's a nun, but I don't know who to contact or what to do. Any advice? Talk to your priest. That's like my number one recommendation. Talk to your priest. Obviously, there's like parish secretaries too. I don't know how big your parish is. I feel like most parishes are smaller and like the priest knows everyone, but maybe not. I don't know what's normal. I just know my experience in Catholicism. But yeah, I feel like everyone knows your priest, so just like talk to him after Mass, you know? Joshua wants to know what religious order you want to join. Vince is here. The legend has arrived. That's so iconic when you say that. Unknown player says, Lizzie, what is your favorite Marian title? And this is a Portuguese tip. My family is borderline traditional, and so all of our home altars are Mary-centered, especially Our Lady of Fatima, Portuguese family. What is my favorite? Probably Queen of Heaven. I think that's super sweet. I love how a lot of people say like, oh, I'm Mexican, I'm Portuguese, so we have like a lot of home altar and arts. And like, I have a lot of icons and stuff, and I'm not of like a Catholic centric country. I'm not from. So yeah, I feel like people from non-Catholic countries can also have like a ton of art too, you know? But I don't know, maybe if you're from a certain country or ethnic group, you're more likely to. But yeah, I have like icons over my entire apartment. Like people who come in, I don't really have guests over that often because we're literally in the pandemic, but people would be like really freaked out because it's like literally crucifixes and icons everywhere. I don't have pictures of my family up or friends. It's like only icons and crucifixes. Like a lot of people are like, I have a home altar. For me, it's like every wall is the altar. I mean, I don't know what else I would want to have on my walls. You know, like before it's like, oh, I like these plant things going down the wall or like whatever lights, but it's like, why would I want something other than icons? Oh, I love your new username, Ephesius of Corinth. Please comment what your username means. Maybe it's some saint I've never heard of. Probably that's what it is. Okay. Is it like your favorite saint? I find it weird how the Catholic Church can dismiss people who have religious hallucinations, but sometimes believe people that have dreams about apparitions. So there's actually like a really decent Catholic history of believing people who have religious, I don't like the word hallucination. I would say vision. A lot of Catholics have visions of things, and it doesn't have to do with mental illness. So it's been very interesting for me because I have a ton of knowledge of different mental illnesses that involve psychosis or religious hallucinations. And so it's very interesting for me reading the lives of people who are mystics, who have had a lot of visions throughout their life. And I'm like, did they have bipolar? And I'm like, no, they didn't. Like looking through their life, they totally didn't. But it is a religious vision. So yeah, I think a lot of the visions are like not mental illness. They're just like legit visions. And Vin says, how are you, Lizzie? I'm really good. I'm feeling kind of stressed out about COVID just because I'm like going out and my job, my campus ministry job is in person now. And it's like weird not staying home all the time. Like I feel exhausted not being able to just like be home all the time. So I have to get used to what normal is again. Okay. Ben, I don't believe there's enough evidence to prove that God exists, considering evolution is disproven literal interpretations of the Bible. Who are you talking to? Like, people who are against evolution is a really weird minority of the US. Like, people in other countries don't have these weird interpretations of the Bible. And the people who interpret the Bible like that is like the minority of Protestants in this country. It's just like really annoying, loud evangelicals who don't believe in evolution. And it's really crazy because Jews and Catholics, so we believe Catholics are like, you know, the original church in the first century, didn't interpret Genesis as literal. Like these interpretations are coming, you know, like 1800 years later. Like all of Christian history, no one thought that was literal. So yeah, super weird. You're just listening to like really weird people that don't represent reality. And I don't know, it would be interesting to know like how many Protestant denominations officially teach against evolution. My guess is it's a minority. Especially because like a lot of the older denominations have like some, you know, intellectualism as a part of them. So anyways, so God works through science. There's not a dichotomy between them. And all of the scientists, a ton of the scientists during the Middle Ages and beyond, it was a lot of priests who were discovering all these things about genetics and biology and astronomy and evolution. Like a lot of that theory came from Catholic priests. So there's never been a dichotomy in Catholicism between faith and science. there's some weird, like, newer Protestant groups that are, but those are just really weird people, you know? They're wrong. Patrick, who's your favorite doctor of the church? That's really hard. I might say Teresa of Avila. I really love her a lot. I'm gonna make a video about favorite doctors of the church. There are way more than I realized though, because I was doing a like saint bio exercise for my job, and I was like, wow, so many people are doctors of the church. So it's more than people realize. Obviously Aquinas is like the top of everyone's list, so that's a given. Vince says, Lizzie, want to know my 2 dreams are. What your dreams are. I love hearing about people's dreams, because bipolar people have such vivid dreams, and it's like a huge part of my life, my dreams. So most people, I'm like, oh, what did you dream about? And they're like, oh, I don't remember any of my dreams. And it's like, it's so weird to me, because that's like such a normal part of my life. And nightmares are so hard. When I would be manic in the past before medication, I would have like the worst, terrifying, vivid nightmares, and they were so bad that I forced myself to fall back asleep so I would forget the dream, because it was just so vivid and creepy and terrifying. Like, I saw so many people in my life killed, and yeah, I don't want to go in depth. Just very gruesome, violent, like, ugh, horrible. So a lot of people say bipolar meds cause vivid dreams, but it's like a huge symptom in depression and mania. So also you can tell which episode you're going into by your dreams. This was only a thing for me when I was off meds, but if I had like a very chaotic, terrifying, violent dream, it meant I was gonna go manic. And if I had a very mundane, boring dream, then it meant I was going to depression. Also, fun fact about bipolar, the dreams are such a big part of your life that I've literally thought I did something in my life and it was my dream, like so many times. And you feel crazy because I'm like, that definitely happened. And you talk to people and you're like, it didn't happen, but you're like, it happened. Like, I have a vivid memory of it happening. And then it's like, oh, maybe it was just my dream. Heather says dream meaning. Unless it's like a specific religious dream, like Mary's husband Joseph, it's probably meaningless. Except a lot of times what you think about before you go to sleep ends up in your dreams. But I've had like really random dreams about people I haven't thought about in like months. And it's like, where is this coming from? So I don't know. Maybe something you saw during the day reminded you, but not, you know, consciously. I don't know. Vince says, my dreams are better than my life sometimes. You have really great dreams then. My dreams are like terrifying or boring. Joshua says, sometimes I don't know if I'm dealing with psychotic features and what's real. Are you talking about because you're getting confused in your dreams? Cat Lady says, what are your opinions on Pope Francis wanting to ban Latin Mass, and what are your thoughts on Vatican II? Pope Francis wasn't trying to ban Latin Mass. He just gave the bishops authority, which makes sense. Like, don't understand this wrong, please. I love the Pope's power, and I think it totally makes sense for him to have more power now that we're a globalized society and every country interacts with every country and stuff. It's not like every diocese is like not communicating with the other ones, like with the internet and stuff and communication. So it makes sense the Pope has more power over like nitpicky things, but the bishops having more power, I don't really get what the problem is. Like, I think bishops should have more power than the Pope. Like, I don't like that the Vatican decides, like, who's the archbishop and, like, where the priests, you know what I mean? I feel like the country should be in charge of that. The archbishops of the current country and stuff. I don't know, that's just my opinion. So he wasn't trying to get rid of it. I think it was, yeah, I don't know what he was thinking when he did it. I think probably his aides were telling him information about like specific instances where the Latin Mass was causing like legit disunity and so many problems in the diocese. And so maybe like there were a couple situations where the bishop was like, okay guys, we need to figure this out. But yeah, I mean, the bishops love the people. The bishops are the shepherds and we're the sheep. That's the metaphor that God gives us. And so they want us to be happy and fully flourishing and joyful and peaceful and close to God. And so I think if a bishop wanted to cancel it and then the people were like, yo, this is how I spiritually connect with God and I have this amazing Catholic community, the bishop's gonna be like, okay, that makes sense. You can have your Latin Mass. You know what I mean? And if there was like a real issue with it, I think the bishop would be like, okay, let's have a meeting. Me and your Latin Mass church. Here are the problems. Let's fix it together. You know what I mean? Like, I doubt there's going to be a bishop who's just like, I hate Latin Mass and get rid of it without conversation. Like, I think they'll change their mind if they do. Patrick, do you find it interesting if Pope Francis passes away before Pope Benedict XVI? There are like all these rumors that Pope Francis is dying, and they're like totally rumors, just to share. So I think people would be confused. So I think we'd have to be like, okay guys, Pope Benedict doesn't become the Pope again. Because I think a lot of people will ask that question. So I think the priests need to like talk about it in homilies and stuff, if that happens, to explain to people. But yeah, it's interesting. There have been other occurrences of Pope stepping down, so it just hasn't happened recently. So people were like, it was really interesting, but it happened before. Unknown player says, okay, goodbye guys. I have to go to online catechism now. Shali has recommended this video out of nowhere. Yeah. The YouTube algorithm is like super weird. So, never asked for this. Okay. Caitlin says, I think I'm mostly just sad that it is harder for Latin Mass to be implemented and not everyone who goes to the TLM is a schismatic. Yeah, honestly, it's just people on Twitter. Like, everyone in person is totally normal. So, I guess if you meet Twitter people in person, then they might not be normal. But yeah, most people are totally normal. Caitlin says, I think maybe it would be better to find a different way to address those people. Yeah, but I think that's the whole point of the bishop doing it. He's not just gonna be like, canceled, I hate you guys. He'll explain to them why. And they can come up with a solution to it better. Like, I don't think, obviously, there are, like, really evil bishops and priests. But I feel like the majority wouldn't just, like, cancel something. Wouldn't just destroy someone's community. Patrick, why is Europe going atheist? I'm gonna go warm up my food again. I'll be right back. the Enlightenment ruined society. It didn't ruin society. There were a lot of good things that came out of the Enlightenment, but like the underlying moral, ethics, philosophy was bad. And so it created like a post-religious philosophy underlying everything that's led to a lot of people leaving religion. So there's a lot of things going on like hedonism, utilitarianism, and I think people don't realize how deeply embedded these ethical codes are. And so it's really hard to fight against it. So the Enlightenment, and it's happening in the US too. People have been like, stop saying that. Because I've said in talks before, Christianity is dying in the US. And I've really been working on this lately. The way I communicate is like in extremes for some reason. So I say things in a really extreme way that I don't even mean. And so when I said dying, I didn't mean dying. Like, think of the word dying, it means there's gonna be zero. And so I'm like declining. So it's good to say declining. Unknown Player says Zoom meeting has not started yet, so more time with you guys, I guess. Aww. Lewis Rendon says, I find it very unsettling the connections between radical traditionalists and Protestant fundamentalists. I can never find common ground. Yeah, it's really interesting to me because the Protestant church I was part of, there was some like fundamentalist part of the group who thought they were against evolution. They thought like every single non-Church of Christ person is going to hell. Just, you know, really weird things. And they're in Catholicism too. There's also fundamentalists in Catholicism. There's literally Catholics in this country who don't believe in evolution. Shocking. It's like Catholic priests literally created some of the science that led to that theory. And they're like, nope, not Catholic enough. Good morning from Greece. Aww. It's so early for you guys. It's so late for us. Okay. Patrick says, how is Catholicism in Greece? I really want to visit there. So many Instagram influencers go to Greece and take like amazing photos. So would definitely love to travel. But more for the historical cultural than like the beaches and buildings and stuff. What happened to my fork? Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. Yuo says, yo, I love your story, truly inspiring. Chicken Pasta talking about Serbians. Cat Lady says, huh. Ben says, if I saw Jesus, I would say, how can I trust your book and your Old Testament quotes in the New Testament that contradict evolution? So Jesus would say that it's important to learn from scholars of literature when you're reading any book. So for example, in school, if you were reading Homer's Odyssey, or if you were reading Plato's Republic, or if you were reading Cicero, just think of like iconic literature from the ancient world. Your teacher is not going to be like, here, read this book by yourself and then do student presentations on the meaning of it. No. Your teacher would talk about imagery and literary techniques at the time that are important in understanding it. The teacher wouldn't just like give it to you and not give any information on how to interpret it. That's why it's like a teacher or a professor who's gone to school in understanding these things. And so we need to apply that same stuff to the Bible as well, because it's documents from the ancient world. And so it's important to interpret them with people who are experts in it. And so in Protestant circles, you're going to find someone who's an expert on the ancient world. They know things about the Assyrian and Babylonian empires. They know ancient Hebrew. They're aware of all these etymology things. So Protestants will talk to someone like that. Catholics, well, look at Jewish interpretations of the text and early Christian interpretations of the text. It's really interesting. There's a lot of similarities between Judaism and Catholicism. And Judaism is also not sola scriptura. They have interpretations and understanding their religious text. And it's the same thing with Catholicism. And so this whole idea where you can just like read an ancient document on your own and understand it is wrong. And it's important to understand that there's different genres in the Bible, which you'd think would be really obvious, but coming from a lot of like Protestant fundamentalists, it's really not obvious because people are just never taught it. But there's different genres. So if you look in Psalms and Proverbs and Sirach, it's more poetic language. There's songs involved. Job also, it's more poetic. Then we have the Gospels, which are written as more historical biography. And so you can just look through the entire Bible. I think the Old Testament is the one that's the most intense, where there's such different genres. And so all the scholars are going to agree that the beginning of Genesis, it's allegorical, and that's the type of literature that it is. So yeah, I know that's a very long explanation, but whenever someone talks about the evolution debacle, I'm like, apply that to literally any other ancient literature, and you would never have someone on their own trying to understand it literally and not giving explanations of the literary techniques. So apply the same knowledge you'd use in the Odyssey, Iliad, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Cicero, Josephus. Apply it to the Bible. Ben says, I'm an atheist, but if I were a follower, I'd be Catholic. Woo-hoo! Since the Bible has already been refuted by evolution, you still have tradition and magisterium. So the thing is, the tradition and magisterium and Bible are pretty intertwined. So when we say tradition, we mean oral teachings, because the ancient world was an oral culture, not a written culture, which is like almost impossible to conceptualize because we're not an oral culture. So they only wrote things down if they really needed to. So a lot of the teachings by the apostles were not written down. And I mean, St. John in the Apostle, in his gospel, he says there would not be enough room in the world for all the books to tell about Jesus. And so that's something in scripture where he's saying there's more to Jesus' teachings than are written down in the gospels, and John was the last gospel. And so there were all these oral teachings in how to interpret the Bible. So our tradition is intertwined with scripture. You can't separate the two. It's just the way we interpret the Bible and some additional teachings that weren't written down. So Sanjiv said St. Augustine of Hippo thought that the creation story in Genesis was allegorical, interestingly enough. He wasn't the only person. I am Orthodox and want to become Catholic. Woo woo! So Google your closest Catholic church. Just put in Google Catholic church and the closest one to you will come up. So there'll be info on the church for the parish secretary or the priest. There'll be a phone number. So you can call the phone number and say, hello, I want to become Catholic. And perfect timing, actually. because RCIA classes, the beginning is around now, so you'll be able to get into an RCIA class. They have meetings every week for like an hour or two, and you can just join in the classes, listen, learn, ask questions. It's a place to debate, to struggle with theology, to disagree, to learn. You know what I mean? It's not just like straight lecture. This is what we believe. It's like a conversation. So yeah, Google your closest Catholic church, call your church, join RCIA. You can also just show up to Mass on Sunday and then talk to the priest after. But I don't know where you live and what the restrictions are like. A lot of people, like the one of the people who just left said they have like a Zoom class. So there's Zoom RCIA. Ben, at what point is it or is it not an allegory is the issue? So you need to talk to scholars. So yes, there's some weird fundamentalist evangelicals who are not scholars who are confused about this. But if you read Jewish interpretations at the time, and if you read Christian interpretations, they'll share really clearly what it is. But you don't even need the teachings of Judaism and Catholicism. If you just study the literary structure of the Hebrew Bible, it's really obvious. And I understand to you it's not obvious. To me, it's not obvious. I haven't taken that many classes on the Old Testament, but the one class I did take on biblical interpretation, yeah, I feel like it's a pretty easy thing to understand. But yeah, if you haven't taken classes on Christianity, but if you read a book on biblical interpretation, then it'll be pretty easy to see. Heather names one of the worst fundamentalists. Is he a Protestant pastor? Yeah, I really don't like the anti-science Christians in the country, because a lot of people believe that like all Christians don't believe in evolution because of these weird Protestants, and it's so annoying. Like, it hurts evangelism because people are like, wow, all Christians don't believe in evolution, they're idiots, they don't believe in science. And it's like, no, that is not the majority. Yeah, that's really interesting, Fidge News. Something else that's very interesting, that's super cool, is in the Gospels, the way they order things is really fascinating. So a lot of times now, if we write a biography, it'll be like they're born at this date, childhood, teenage years, adult, early career. You know what I mean? It's like completely chronological. Whereas in the Gospels, a lot of times it'll be like facts about Jesus' journey, and then there'll be like a parable, and then there'll be like a parable above, and it's like sandwiching the teaching, and it's all connected to the same thing. So it's like Jesus heals a blind man, and then above it's like a metaphor about seeing spiritually. It's stuff like that. So it's really beautiful. Even like I guess people would say the Gospels is like very similar to current literature because it's like a biography, but it's very different. And it's really beautiful when you're able to see the differences, and that causes a lot of people to lose their faith because in the Gospels, the most obvious explanation is the temple. When Jesus is I'm so tired right now. When Jesus goes to the temple and turns the tables around and gets mad at the money changers and everything, that is at the beginning of John's gospel, very beginning, and it's at the very end of the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which are very similar. So a lot of people are like, who's lying? Which is true? And it's like, it doesn't really matter the timing of it, it's the meaning of it. So it's very beautiful the way they did biography then versus now. Now it's very like analytical and like facts, whereas there is like interweaving teachings in a beautiful way to make certain things stand out more. So Lizzie, don't stay up too late. Okay, I should probably go. It's been 2.5 hours of live streaming. I do have to film one part of my video. It should be up tomorrow. It has to get approved by the brand. So yeah. Creator says Christian accounts are being banned on TikTok. It's probably because they're talking about controversial things. So yeah. The censorship is kind of weird on all the social medias. But I think if you're just normal, it shouldn't happen. But I don't know. I just try to be not as controversial by presenting things in like a really sweet way and not being name calling, which is like the whole point of the beginning of the live stream, is not name calling Protestants. So okay, I'm gonna go. I have to finish filming. I'm gonna take my bipolar meds. I hope you guys have so much fun on Mass tomorrow. Someone said my dad is not letting me become Catholic. Pray for your parents to have a change of heart and save up money and move out when you turn 18. Maybe get some roommates. Go away for college. I love you guys a lot. As always, I live stream at 8 to 10 Eastern, 5 to 7 Pacific, super tired, 7 to 9 Central, and 6 to 8 Mountain. Okay, I'll see you guys. I'm gonna be uploading tomorrow. It's a video, what's in my bag, what's in my purse, showing like Catholic things I carry along. And then there's another video next week on the theology of alcohol in Catholicism. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video.